have that CPS that I mentioned earlier, the country program strategy. Whatever the project is, there are some specific goals and objectives in our program strategy, and again, that document is reviewed and developed every 4 years for each cycle. Whatever your project is, it has to contribute to meeting those goals. That's a requirement of the program. If there's no contribution at all for the activities of the project to meet those goals, then the answer is no. Very important. Inside the country program strategy, the JEP allows the country to prioritize funding areas, okay, in each 4-year cycle. In the current 4-year cycle, our priorities were and still are until the end of the cycle, which ends in June 30th of this year, is projects looking at climate change and projects looking at biodiversity. So projects that will support the implementation of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, projects that will support the implementation of the UN Convention on Biodiversity. When you look at those conventions, I mean, boy, it's like the window's wide open in terms of things that you can do. There are lots of different areas under it. Now, though we have priority areas, that doesn't say that we would not look at funding projects in the other thematic areas. We will. Applications come in for chemicals. We look at the chemical application in the project, right? But if we have, I don't know, 10 applications and there's a toss-up between funding one climate change and biodiversity versus chemicals. Because we have a priority, unlikely to biodiversity, climate change won't be a funded.
Can you overlap focal areas? Or?
Yes, you can. You have a project, you could have multiple focal areas, but you have to have one main driver. Okay, so you have to identify that my main focus is climate change. We're going to look at the sand dune restoration, but while we're looking at restoration, there's a biodiversity component where you're going to put in native vegetation and you're going to take out invasive alien species from the vegetation. Okay, but your driver is climate change, because at the end of the day, the big part of the project is to restore the sand dune to abate the water, the salt water from coming in during storms and stuff. We didn't print any hard copies, but we do have electronic copies of the CPS, and if you Google it, you probably find a PDF of it online. Because we're at the end of the current cycle in the next 5 or 6 weeks, then over between July 1 of 2014 and July 30th of 2015, we're going to develop a new country program strategy, because the rules of the JEF are going to be tweaked this month. The meeting is going to be in 2 weeks by 188 countries. They sit together and decide what the new rules of the game are for the next 4 years. And then they hand it down to us, and we have to try and tweak our program to meet those needs. Okay. Bahamas has a voice in that 188 countries. Our Minister of the Environment and our focal points for the JEF go and will speak on what we want to see happen. The projects need to contribute overall to the operational program of the JEF, meaning simply that it has to fit into one of the thematic focal areas. If it doesn't, they're not going to fund it. Okay, I've seen applications come in to restore the old library on the park. That's not us. That's UNESCO. But that's not the JEF Small Grants program. So we can say no to those type of projects. Okay. The project should promote environmental sustainability. It should look, if possible, at poverty reduction or alleviation. and it should have a capacity development component to it. I mean, this one here again is a 100% capacity development project. So if you go after my example of the sand dune project for climate change, then you should build in an educational component. Educate the stakeholders that use the sand dune. Educate the people that have to maintain the sand dune. But there has to be a capacity development component built inside the project. The community has to participate or should participate in the consultation and the development and even the monitoring and evaluation of the project. You came to us and say that, say for example, oh, let's all get on the plane and fly down to Rumkey, right? And while we're in Rumkey, you can go into the center of town and there may be a wetland system there. And we can clean up that wetland system. All of us. Whole One Eleuthera Foundation, me and Stacey. Right? And then we can jump back on the plane and we fly back here to Eleuthera. Okay? Now, while we was cleaning up that wetland system, where the people in Rumkey are sitting on their porch with their legs crossed, wondering who these people are. Where they come from. Why they in our community cleaning up? How come they ain't talking to us? You know? That type of project, we're not going to fund. So, in the efforts of you developing the project, you need to make sure that you, in the area wherever you're located or sited or implemented, you need to contact the community people in the area. You need to contact the stakeholders who are going to be affected by what you do in the area. And they should be involved in the process. You should consult with them. You should hear what they got to say. Don't be like us who going down to Rumkey and just cleaning up the wetland and ain't talking to the people and then jumping back on our plane and flying back to Eleuthera. Okay? So that's important, and we need to see that in your project document when coming to us. Organizations that we give funding to. And this sometimes will be a hard one, but we try to avoid funding Deon and Stacey Incorporated yesterday. We're an NGO. We do biodiversity, climate change, and land degradation issues. We have a lot of expertise between us. And you see the sand dune there inside Bannerman Town, we wrote it, and INGO that was formed yesterday. Gonna come to you for $50,000, which we want you to give us. And then we can go down there and we can deal with Bannerman down. Because we're experts. Okay? And you know, we didn't bother to go down to the registry and register our NGO. We Deon Stacey Incorporated, y'all don't know us. You know, y'all should know us. Right? So those type of organizations, we probably ain't gonna never fund. Okay? In order to receive funding, you need to be registered in the Bahamas. You can be registered as an NGO through the government registry system, where you can incorporate yourself into a foundation. You could make yourself into a cooperative under the Cooperative Act. You could register as a non-profit business. Okay? But you have to be registered here in the Bahamas locally and legitimately. And that registration process automatically will put some things in place that are very important to us. Like, it'll give you some structure in your organization. They're going to ask you who the president, who are the directors, who's the secretary, who's the treasurer, who can hold the purse. Okay? They're going to ask you, where's the purse? Is it at Bank of the Bahamas? Is it at World Bank? You know, there are some subtle requirements that process undertakes that will help us to feel a little bit more confident that you are not a fly-by-night organization only looking for some free money. Okay? And we ask you in your application actually to provide us the proof of this. which we could always follow up on. I like our country. Our country is so small. You know, if we had Deon and Stacy Incorporated, you know, I could call down, I could call Sean Ingram and say, Sean, you know Deon and Stacy Incorporated? You know, you have any experience with them? How long is it in existence? What's the last project they do in Bynum and down?
Don't trust them.
Right, so in our little small country, you get information easy. Okay, so if you came to us and you want to apply minority organizations, I could call up a few people. I could ask our committee. You know, y'all know these said? Y'all heard what they said? What have they done? What is their track record? Are they trustworthy? Are they honest? You know, are they transparent? Or they only want our money? Right? So that's important to us. Some of the projects actually to go on to a business component, and this is kind of like a gray area in a way. But we like projects that have a sustainable livelihood component built into the project. We have a couple in the Bahamas that are going on now. I'll tell you some examples. But when you look at adding a business spin onto the project, then you need to look a little bit deeper in being able to develop have the technical and practical support to implement the project. Look at how you have the management practices. Look at who's going to benefit from implementing that project. You know, who's going to be the actual beneficiary of it at the end of the day. In our case, the Jeff wants the beneficiary to be a collective, right? Non-government collective, not an individual, okay? So I can use Jacinta as an example on this one here. Sorry, this one's fictitious. Okay, so Jacinta say, well, you know, my granddaddy gave me some property up there in Eleuthera. That looks nice for a pineapple field. Hey man, we could go down there, we could grow pineapples and start selling it to the market. That could be profitable for me and my family. I'm a part of One Eleuthera. Let me find a way for One Eleuthera to go down there and get the grant so they can fix up my pineapple field. Right? And you know, you go into One Eleuthera, you manipulate a few people here and there, get them to put the application together, and then at the end of the day, you know, all this time you might be thinking, oh, everybody in One Eleuthera sharing inside the profits from the pineapple field. But that time you sent it there and only her. You know? So if only one person's going to benefit, and we could clearly see that inside what you present, we're not going to fund the project. Okay? It has to be the collective. So if it was a project, we have a project now that was launched in April in South Andres by a group there, NGO there in South Andres, that is going to look at restoration of their traditional historic coconut groves. And they're going to look at harvesting coconuts from the coconut grove. And from the harvesting, they're going to do agro-processing of the coconuts to produce coconut milk, coconut oil, use coconut broth for craft. They're going to produce grated coconut. And at the end of the day, all of those products that is going to be produced from the project are going to be sold in the marketplace by the group. Okay? So by selling those products, the group probably could make enough income to hire somebody full time to manage the process and run the agro-processing plant. Okay? And the profits that come in from selling those products could go back into the organization to enhance what they do or enhance their activities or to help them to further survive, I would say, or have a sustainable livelihood within their little rural local community, right? So where there were no jobs for the persons in that group, now they've created a project that will end in the long-term production of these coconut products, and that will provide some level of employment if not for one, for two, for three, for many. It depends on how far you go with the coconut. Inside other areas of the world, they take the coconut and from the tree down to the nut, they use everything. There's something for everything with a coconut. Sell it on the coconut market, yes.
So for those who are doing the project, you're like how you was preparing avocado and Yemen, you said just now that there are other places that use it from the coconut straight down to the nut. So you all would transfer that information to the Andrews project as well.
Yes, as far as possible, where we had, we give them access. We have a database. I'll talk about it a little bit. We have a database of all of our projects worldwide, and that's accessible to everybody online at our website. But you can search up coconut, and it'll show you all the coconut projects around the world that has been done with Jeff money. And if you find one you're interested in, then there's contact email for the national coordinator like myself, or for actually the persons who undertook the project. Contact them directly if you want, or through our office, and get the information and replicate the project here.
Starting off scratch, so you have some assistance in there already.
Yes, yes. No need to reinvent the wheel. Like they say, the wheel has already been invented, tried, tested, and proven. You could get the template, bring it here, take the parts you need, and get your project going. Okay, but I say that to say that again. That gives a business aspect to the project. So at the end of the day, that group is managing the agro-processing plant. With equipment, they have to pay electricity, they have to buy fuel, they have to manage the salaries, they have to manage the investment, the harvesting, and all of that. So that's something to think about when you go down that road of sustainable livelihoods. Added on to that, project outcomes should be sustainable. The Jeff don't like to invest their money, then at the end of the day, that's full stop. Nothing else happens after that. They prefer to see projects that have enough thought go into it to make the project sustainable long term. Okay? So back to the example with the coconuts in South Andres. A main component of that project is to restore the historic coconut grove. And they were removing the invasives that invaded the grove, cleaning it up, clearing it up, and then they're going to plant new coconut trees. Okay? You already have 100 coconut trees standing. You could only harvest from them for so long. So they're going to plant another 200 trees. So in the future, you have young ones growing up that will provide you a sustainable source to get your coconuts from. Okay, so long-term vision you have to look at when you develop the project document. So technical and human capacity projects need to demonstrate that you have or you can acquire the technical expertise that you need to implement the project. Okay? You may come to us and say, well, we like this society center here. It's very nice. Thank you to the Kansas Society. And maybe we want to go from these compact fluorescent bulbs and the fans, and we want to go solar. Make the society run off-grid. Okay? This is a project that's coming from One Eleuthera Foundation. And then you list that the main technical expert is Jacinta Gordon and Sean Ingram. And then we scratch our head and say, well, Jacinta, do you have any expertise in putting in solar panels? Jacinta says no. So we scratch our head and say, well, where One Eleuthera going with this project? They want to put in solar panels, but there ain't nobody there, ain't nobody showing, no experts inside the project document have a clue about saying how you put in solar panels. So when you develop such a project, you need to say, hey, we need to hire a consultant who's familiar, or the company that's you're buying the solar panels from, they need to send their expert to help us to put it in. Because we don't know how to hook it up to the batteries, how to hook it up to the inverter, how to hook it up to the solar panels and put them on the roof. Okay, so for those projects, any type of project actually, that requires some specific technical expertise, you need to make sure that you have it built into your project. You need to think about that, you know, because when it comes to us in terms of application, we look at it and again, if we say, oh, it's solar panels, and they say Jacinta's the expert, and they call Jacinta, she says she never put up a panel in her life. And we say, well, sorry, you know, we ain't going down that road. We're not going to put that. Okay. We talked earlier about the co-funding and co-financing component, the one-to-one. Projects could raise co-funding and co-financing, we would say, from any legitimate source in the country. We don't want you to go to the mob. We don't want you to go to the gangsters. I didn't say that. Right, but we want your source of funding to be legitimate, because the Jeff like to see his name and like to associate with people, and we don't want our label here associated with the gangsters from East Nassau. You know, and they'll be like, look at your boy, you see who Jeff in partnership with? You know, it looks something like this here. You know, where you have organizations that have a good rapport, good reputable like organizations, good integrity, to say, okay, you can put our name next to One Eleuthera Foundation. Okay? We can advertise with our name next, and we feel all right. Okay, so when you look for the co-financing, you could contact government, private sector, you can contact other donors, other organizations like ours that give grants. All we ask is to be legitimate. Right. If you have a problem raising your co-financing for your projects, you need to let us know. Because even though I don't have a bank or a vault of money, right? Inside our donor community, we talk to each other as far as possible. And you might have a project idea that requires funding. We might be able to fund part of it. And the U.S. Embassy might say, hey, you know, we fund the same type of thing. And we have contacts at the embassy. We could call and say, hey, why don't we partner together and help out One Eleuthera with this project? Because at the end of the day, they're going to meet your needs, they're going to meet our needs, they're going to meet the needs of the community. Okay? So I may have contacts that you don't have, or vice versa, and we try to help each other out in terms of getting you the co-financing requirements that you need for the project, as far as possible. Questions?
Is there a time frame allowed the execution of the grants? How does that work? I mean, I know various grants will take different time and any limitation.
Yes, good question. We require that our small grant projects are implemented within 12 months. Okay, this is for the projects that we fund up to $50,000 in grant funding. We give you a 12-month time period to implement it. 2 years ago, or a year and some ago, the JAB allowed us to put what is called strategic grants in place. And the strategic grants are larger grants, they're $150,000 grants, and they could run up to 24 months, and they encompass more than just one focal area. You're talking, you know, multiple focal areas with multiple reaches inside the project. So those one we run for up to 24 months, the other ones up to 12 months, or less. In terms of funding, we provide up to the $50,000 mark for the regular grants. When we have strategic grant funding available, that's up to $150,000. In terms of when do you apply, we do a call for proposals usually in the spring and in the fall. We try to limit our committee meetings to 2 meetings per year. Again, we ain't paying them to be. We're not paying them for their expertise. They're volunteers. So we try not to pressure them too much and have a meeting every month or every other week. Right? So we do twice a year to call for proposals, but in between that, I accept applications actually as they come in. Okay, if somebody bring an application tomorrow, I'll take it and review it. If the time period for the implementation of the project is so critical, or if we have a volume that's, have a good time frame, then we'll call a special sitting of the committee to review those projects and approve them. Yes?
One more question. When the projects are finished, for example, the example you use with Copeland and Andrews, is there a follow-up by Jeff as if the program continues, independent of the initial grant or
is there a follow-up?
keep an eye on the projects that
we definitely keep an eye on it as it's being implemented to the time frame. Beyond that time frame, I would say let's make courtesy calls on the projects to see how they do it or how they do it. But in our experience, how it's been is that usually, well, I'll tell you a little bit of funding, but usually that would be like a phase A. For the last 5 years and projects that we've had, groups have done their first grant, and then after that, the same group will come back for another grant to add on to kind of what they've done before. So it's been an automatic follow-up in that way. Does Jeff allow us to provide any CSO up to $50,000 within the Jeff project cycle, within that 4-year cycle? Okay? So our 4 years, again, is going to end this year and then start 2015, 2019. But within that, you can take up to $50,000 in one shot. You can split it in two $25,000. You can split it in $5,000, $10,000 grants. But once you reach the 50 within that time period, then that's your limit, with the exception of the strategic grants, and that's the 150, and then that will be your time limit. The Jeff usually allows any organization to access funding for 3 cycles, I think. It's like a 3 cycle, 50, 50, 50. That's right.
I don't know the question. How long is
Can run. We usually want them to get finished within 12 months. If it has to go beyond 12 months, they need to write in for request for an extension. They make the request, justify the extension, and then we probably provide another 3 months follow to help it wrap up.
What is the success ratio in the grants that Jeff has provided?
In the Bahamas?
Yes.
Let's see, I think right now we up to over the 5 years, I think we have maybe about 30 or 31 projects that have been funded. And the dollar value is about $822,000 over the last 5 years. Out of the 32 projects, I've only had reason to cancel 2. Okay? That one successfully completed. The others all went to completion. And the 2 I canceled, I can tell you now. One was for misappropriation of funds. Okay, when you come to us and you say, oh, we can buy a rig, buy the rig and get the receipt from a legitimate hardware store. Okay? Because, not that I have a lot of time, but when I review my reports, if I see something on the place, I pick up the phone and I call the hardware store. Hey, I have a bill here from Monday Lucha said they bought $1,000 a rig from you. Did they do that? And the person on the other hand just says, yay or nay. Oh, we don't know anything about that. Okay? So we try to follow through on some of them. And the other one, the second one that got canceled was because they didn't complete the project. Okay? They went like, they say go the whole 9 yards, they went 8 yards and stopped. And then they didn't go any further. Who's next? Yeah, administrative costs in the current cycle was up to, I think, 10% of the grant. The trend has been down and down and down on administrative costs. So in this upcoming cycle, it's probably going to be 5%. And I say that because in the cycle before that, it was 20%. And then Jeff came back and cut it in half to 10. So we suspect that he cut it in half again.
So if you provide grants internationally?
Yeah, I mean, how do you mean? Because the Jeff is international. The Jeff is in 123 countries in the world. And they provide grants to all of those countries. Yes.
So how do you monitor that? I come to you, I have a legitimate company, and
NGO.
And you accept the application. So I give you 5,000, and then, I mean, you said you can call up. So how do you monitor that? We have to bring in receipts to you?
Right. There's a reporting process for the grants, and reporting is usually for regular grants that run in 12 months. I ask it for them to do it quarterly. Do a quarterly reporting, and that quarterly report does financial and technical implementation of the grant. And with the financial component of it, we provide you with a template. You provide us back with a template of your expenditure, and also you provide us with the receipts and the invoices for all of the expenditure. We like receipts. For every cent the Jeff invests, they want a receipt for. Okay.
In the event that you have to cancel a grant or misappropriation of funds, does the person or the organization have to reimburse?
Yeah, that's a good question. We like to get our money back, but sometimes it isn't as practical. Okay, so we put a lot of pressure. We want our money back, but to get it out of some organizations that shady, it's paying hard. Okay, in the case of that one there with misappropriation, that was caught like very early in the implementation of the project, so they didn't get away with it.
So you don't give them a lump sum. I mean, you don't give them.
Right. We don't provide a lump sum. There's disbursements.
Of what, 500,000? I mean,
This percentage-wise, disbursements usually be around 25% of the funding. So we give you 25% to get mobilized and get started up. You spend that, do what you say you're going to do in the first part of the project, report back to us, technical and financial, and then we release another disbursement. If there's any issue at that point, then we hold on to our money until you get it sorted out.
I have a question about the focal areas. Those been signed somewhere on the website?
Stacy will go through
if you apply under one of the headings and that is not the right fit, but it fits somewhere else, you will automatically steer them in that direction.
She's
You
saying
put it
that
under
they
climate change.
classify it.
Oh, you classify it wrong.
Yeah.
If we would come back to you and say change it, probably not. The reason being is that our program in the Bahamas is an office of one. You're looking at me. Okay? And it's up to me to be able to look at all the applications from across the country and to deal with the monitoring of all the projects and all the reports across the country. Okay, so a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, we applied to you, but you didn't get back to us after the deadline. Usually, if we don't get back to you, that means that your project didn't get approved. We usually get like about 20 or 25 applications in. Out of 25, they might approve 7 or 8, right? And the minute they get approved, I need to start a process to get them on the ground running and implemented. A lot of times, I really don't have the time to sit in front of the phone and call up every applicant. Well, you know, you didn't get approved, and this is the reason why, yada, yada, going down. But email everybody. You know, I try to do it as far as possible, but it's only me. I would like it to change for them to hire somebody else. I've been asking for somebody else, but they haven't approved it yet.
This isn't really a question. It's kind of like something to help up. If you're applying for a project to Jeff and you're not sure which focal area it falls under, Deon will be happy to help you decide which one it goes under. Because anything you ask him, he's been very helpful. So any questions I have, he is always helpful in answering them. So the right thing would be to ask before you submit the application.
I try, but again, you have to know, it's only me. And we have projects in Grand Bahama, Abaco, Andros, Providence, and Zuma right now. I think those 5 islands are projects active right now. And in addition to trying to get new projects. So I was telling Stacey earlier that we have about $78,000 left that we have to commit by the end of June in funding for projects. So I would leave you in that. That's a challenge to you as one Eleuthera. If I can leave here on Wednesday with a project document in hand, meeting the criteria, you are almost guaranteed. I can't guarantee it because I don't approve or deny grants. The committee does that. But if it's meeting the criteria, more than likely you will be on a good footing of getting some of that funds that are available.
Okay, so when Eleuthera, with everyone in this room, has a project to submit to Jeff on Wednesday, then what we've gotten to fund this workshop will be subtracted from 50,000, or do we still get 50,000?
It will be subtracted from 50,000.
That's what I thought.
Right, because but the good thing is timing, because we are at the end of this cycle. Okay, so you could go for another 40,000 in this cycle, right? And next year when the new cycle starts again, you're eligible for 50. All right.
Sounds good.
And that's our goal, that we will have a project ready by when it's the end of this session, Stacey.
No, yeah, that's us. You just help us get there. That's all.
So with that, thank you again for attending the workshop, and thank you for allowing me to be here, and hopefully, we'll be able to move back and get something on the ground going in terms of the Jeff project here. If not this year in this cycle, definitely in the beginning of the next cycle.
We want to try this cycle.
Yes, Jacinta has all the presentations.
Yeah, after this is complete, all the presentations will be available to everyone online.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, everyone is welcome to get tea or coffee or drinks or some fruit, and I ask you to get whatever you need to get and come directly back to your table, since we are a little bit behind time.
If you're tweeting.